Hi, this is Maxime Verbist. Do you know that a part of your consciousness remain under the control of very infantile drives? We call it the lower soul. The first line of 7 major arcana reflects the 7th dimension of that lower soul. Let's explore them because it is a third of your destiny that is condensed into them. Before we enter into the explanation, let us start with a small visualization. To get prepared to that visualization, place the 7 first major arcana with that Latin number in front of you, from the magician in the left to the chariot in the right. Take the time to install them in a line. Then close your eyes. Switch on your imagination and try to imagine that the world all around you has just been created for you. The people are just there for you. Basically, they are your slaves. They are just there to make you happy. So, what do you want for life? What will make you feel very happy and selfishly happy? Because at this level, there is no moral rules. There is no sense of responsibility. Everything is yours. Everything is under your control. Now, you may open your eyes and start observing the 7 arcana. Let your imagination get impressed and try to pick the one that fits the most to that feeling of omnipotence you may have experienced during the visualization. You may pause the video and take as much time as you want. It's all yours. So what is the lower soul? We owe to Sigmund Freud the discovery of a very obscure and bubbly corner of our consciousness that is mostly centered into the infantile desire of omnipotence. And after a while and through education, that infantile side is supposed to fade away. And for most of adults, it will be just visible through the dreams and the fantasies that they are having, or maybe sometimes expressing themselves when we are under stress or very tired. But unfortunately, for a minority of adults, those dimensions will remain extremely strong and guiding in a consciousness. And clinical psychology call it personality disorders, because those dimensions will keep distorting deeply our behavior and create a lot of trouble for ourselves and also for our surrounding. Thank goodness, those very immature dimensions can be also turned into strengths. And that's the paradox of the soul, is that every tendency could be maladaptive or be turned into something very positive, a strength. The magician called in French the Battler, is the first arcana of the major series. So we can see a young man playing skillfully with the objects that we also see in the minor arcana. We have coins, cup, swords, and wands. Basically, the magician is a stage magician, and he performs his tricks through two powers. Of course, the dexterity of his hands, but most of all, the dexterity of his tongue, because a stage magician have to create a narrative to deflect the attention. So he's there to cheat people, just for the fun and for the show. As a dream of omnipotence, the magician thinks that he is capable to create all the illusion he wants to get what he wants from people. It's the power of lie. And we see a lot of that to kids from the age 4, 5, when they realize that sometimes it serves them better to lie to get what they want. And it is a dimension of life. It can be even turned into a strength, because if we want to interact properly in society, we have to identify who is lying and who is telling the truth. And we can outsmart them, and we can have the audacity sometimes to produce not only lies, but some form of alteration of reality to get what we need and want from people. But as every arcana, the magician also has its potential for pathology. We can imagine that people that could not help but lying are under the control of that arcana. And it also creates a very strange distortion into relationship, because it can also induce people to lie to us and to try a game where the smartest will manage to cheat the other. But at the end, what is the purpose of those relationships based on lies? The high priestess is called in French la papesse. We can see a middle-aged woman comfortably seated and reading a book. She has a veil behind her back and the triple crown of the popes. It is a probable allusion to the legend of Pope Joan, which was a woman in disguise who managed to reach the level of being a pope. The dream of omnipotence of the high priestess is about knowing everything about her environment, and therefore being able to predict anything that is going to happen around her. And no doubt, knowledge gives us capacity to anticipate. But it is somehow childish to believe that we can know everything about everything. Obviously, as a strength, the high priestess will bestow a very high capacity to assimilate and memorize knowledge. But as a vice, the high priestess will turn into a reclusion in an ivory tower of theoretical knowledge. And we can see that in a condition called the schizotypal personality disorder, where the person will elaborate very complex and sophisticated theory about everything, but will be basically incapable to deal with real-life relationship. The third arcana is the Empress. We can see an elderly lady holding the three imperial emblems, the eagle, the crown, and the scepter. In the Roman and Germanic Empire, the name Empress was no official title. It was just the closest woman to the emperor. It was sometimes her sister or her mother. So the only power of the Empress is the power that is given through the emperor. If we take it as a fantasy of omnipotence, the one of the Empress is to be like a news anchor that will inform the emperor of what is going on in the empire, and that will to broadcast the information of the emperor towards the people. And most of all, she will just transmit, but not taking any decision. She's just a messenger, and her fantasy is to be a messenger that everyone's listen to. Obviously, as a strength, the Empress gives the strength for the communication and the capacity to get listened to. But as a vice, the Empress will remain in a situation of just being a go-between. And that's exactly what's happened with a dependent personality disorder. The person will wait an emperor to take the decision for her. The fourth arcana of the tarot is the Emperor. We can see an old man sitting in a throne, and he's in the middle of the countryside. So we can assume that he may be in an official visit somewhere in the empire or in a military campaign. The dream of omnipotence of the emperor is not very difficult to imagine. He wants to rule everything. But above all, what the emperor needs in such a sophisticated state made out of many nations, cultures, and traditions is to keep peace. And to do so, he will maybe make war, but his dream of omnipotence is peacemaking. So in real life, the power of the emperor, the strength that is contained by the emperor, is to be able to take decisive action, is to have the right amount of assertiveness. But when it turns into a vice, it will give what it used to be called the passive-aggressive personality. It is the person who wage war against things that do not really deserve to wage war, and he will abstain to enter in a conflict when it is required. The fifth arcana of the major is the Pope. And we can see an old man wearing the triple crown and the triple cross, teaching to two characters that they are most probably cardinals. The dream of omnipotence of the Pope is related to the actual power that has bestowed to the Pope of infallibility. That means that the Pope is not only a leader. The opinion he's giving about theology is considered to be the reflection of God's opinion. And that's what the Pope is dreaming to be. He dreams to have an absolute reference of what is true and not true, what is the right way to do and the wrong way to do. When the power of the Pope is turned into a strength, it gives us that capacity to stick precisely to user manuals, to get the right norms, and to address to the right authority to know what is the right answer. It gives us a lot of precision. But if the power of the Pope is turned in the wrong direction, it will make the personality extremely rigid. That's what we call an obsessive personality disorder, where everything is supposed to stick to a standard, even if it is not required. The sixth arcana is the Lover, and we can see a young man surrounded by two very different types of women. Over them there is the little angel Cupido, and obviously that young man is in a situation where we will have to take a choice between two women, and he feels quite at ease in that situation. As a dream of omnipotence, the Lover wants attention, he wants warmth, he wants everyone to display love towards him. And the more there are people who get his attention, the happiest he is. So when that capacity, that potentiality is turned into a strength, it gives that capacity to create a warm atmosphere around us and let our interlocutor feel that he's very important for us and very welcomed. But when the Lover turns into a vice, it becomes what clinicians call the histrionic attitude, a constant need to attract the attention by any means possible. And that is exhausting for the surrounding, even if the person itself thinks that it's very interesting. The arcana number 7 represents a vehicle driven by 4 horses and mounted by a man, dressed with a ceremonial armor, holding a scepter and a crown. It is obviously a scene of victory march. As a dream of omnipotence, the Chariot dreams to be recognized as the highest position in the society. What he wants is the highest status, to get all the privilege of high-ranking position. And when it is turned into a strength, it can give us the mastery of everything we need to set right, to get respected and to get honor by our surrounding and to respect and honor others. But as a vice, it will turn into an undue quest of a status that we don't really deserve. And that is what we call the narcissistic personality disorder, seeking honor we don't deserve. If you have recognized yourself in one of the 7 descriptions, take note of it, because it may be a very important dimension of your destiny. Pick the card and put it in your bedside table, because now you will have to enter in dialogue with that dimension which is potentially be turned into a vice. It can also be turned into a strength, but the most important thing, it indicates one of the dimensions of your soul, the lower one.